and welcome to this Excel tutorial. Today we're going to look at some text manipulation functions inside of Excel. And what the data is that we're looking at here is a set of information that came over from a different management company. They use their address field a little differently to the way that we want to represent it. We want to break out the street number and the street address to two separate fields. So that would potentially become address 1 and address 2, or we may just rename those columns. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I'm going to create a little bit of space so that we can manipulate some information and see what's going on with it. So I'm just going to select some columns and then insert some space and actually just reduce the size of those columns so we can kind of see what's going on. So the first thing we're going to look at is a command in the text series of functions. So I can actually select the category of text, and I'm going to pull down this menu and I'm going to choose this function called left. What the left function does, as its name suggests here, it returns the specified number of characters from the start of a text string. That might not mean much to you, but it'll become much clearer as we try it. So what we're going to do is click OK. That is the function we want to work with. And the first thing it asks us to do is tell us exactly which text do I want to operate on. In this case, I want to operate on this address field. The next thing it needs to know is the number of characters that we're trying to pull back. So in this case, if all of the street numbers were 4 characters, it would be just as simple as being able to type in a 4 in this field, and it would give us, you can see the result in here in this text string, it would give us 2591 as a result. Go ahead and click OK, and you can see the result right there. We could quite easily then just double click on the autofill handle, and that would go and collect all the information and put it into the appropriate field. But we've got a problem right off the bat, because down here on line 45, it's really lot 88, Grasmere View Parkway South, not lot 8. So the first thing we've done is create a problem for ourselves. So let's go ahead and undo that, because we're going to change that formula. And we can select, instead of the first 4 characters, we can select the first 5 characters. If I just hit the enter key at this point, it will look like we've done the same job, except when we copy that formula down, double click on the autofill, it will copy that formula all the way down the page, but this time it's picked up the 5 characters to include lot 88. Pretty simple example. And that might be as much as we need in some cases. But in this particular case, we need to separate the street number from the street name, and all we've got so far is the number. We don't have the name on its own. And although there is a complementary function in the text management series called write, so we're in the text category, we come down here, and we could choose write and click OK. We could ask it to operate on the same amount of text that we were using here, which is the Marshfield Preserve Way string of text. The problem we have is that the number of characters that we would have to pull back, we don't exactly know, because as you can see, Marshfield Preserve Way is slightly longer text than Grasmere View Parkway, and we don't know what the exact length of each of those strings is. So the write function isn't going to work out so well. One thing we could do, however, instead of choosing this approach and separating left from right, let's delete that column. And instead, let's use a function called text to columns. So by selecting the data I want to operate on and returning back to the top of the spreadsheet, I can now click on data and choose this option here called text to columns. What that does, as its name suggests, is it takes a string of text and separates it out into columns based upon how the text itself is delimited or separated. So as you can see, there are two different types here. You can use delimited or you can use fixed width. Fixed width doesn't really work for us because we know that this particular set of data isn't fixed width. So let's go ahead and explore some of the options with delimited. I'm going to click on next, and as you can see, it's now offering me a number of possible delimiters that I could select from. One of them happens to be space, and I'm going to select that. And you can see from the preview down here instantly what it does. Wherever there was a space, it goes ahead and separates that piece of information into its own column. That looks like it could do us a pretty good job. I'm going to click on next. It's going to ask us where I want to put the information. At the moment, it assumes that I want to put it into destination absolute cell C2. That's not going to work because that's where the data is that we're working on. So let's go ahead and just move it one column across and put it into column D. Okay, I think we can give that a try. Hit finish. Okay, done a pretty good job. As you can see, if we automatically expand the column widths, it's done a pretty good job, except some of the information falls into an additional column because there were, I guess, more spaces in this string of text than there were in this string of text. Okay, not too difficult to resolve. But one of the things it's done is it's actually separated very nice and neatly. It's taken all of the house numbers and put them into a separate column on their own. All we've got to do now is figure out a way to actually bring this information, the street name itself, back together again. As luck would have it, there is a method, there's a function that does that inside of Excel. It's again one of the text manipulation functions. I'm going to again create a little bit of space so that we can operate, add some additional columns, insert, and let's explore the command called concatenate. So on the function page, again in the text category, concatenate, as its name suggests here, it joins several text strings into one text string. So let's just click on that and see how it operates. So here we go. Text 1 is the field it's asking for. It's asking which piece of text is the first piece that you want to join to another piece. Well, in this case, it's the first column of the address, Marshfield in this example. If we go ahead and in column 2, click on preserve, or in text 2, I'm sorry, click on preserve, what this preview is showing us down here is that Marshfield Preserve is all now one string, but it's not exactly the way we need it. What we would really want to do is put the space back in there. Clearly concatenate didn't know that we removed the space in the first place. So let's just back out of that again, take that text 2 out of here and delete it. What we can do is we can put a set of quotations which tells Excel that what follows is exactly what I want you to do. Press the space key and put another set of quotations. It'll put anything in between here, but what we're asking it to do is add a space. Now in text 3, I can add preserve, and you can see from the preview here that it's now got Marshfield space preserve. So under text 4, if we're going to add way in there, we're going to have to also put another space. So quotation marks, space, quotation marks. Now it's put a literal space. And now in column or text 5, I can actually put the final part of this, which is way. And now you can see the preview, Marshfield Preserve Way. All nice and good. However, that doesn't help us when we get down to line 13, because line 13 contains another phrase or another aspect. It's essentially a suffix to the street name. So we might have to go ahead and put one more space and the data that would be in column H if it existed. So it looks like we don't have the room to do that here in the function arguments. In reality, there is a little scroll bar off to the right hand side here, and that will let us put in some additional strings of text. So I'm again put a space in there, and I'm also now in the text 7 going to select any text that would happen to be in column H. It doesn't look like it did anything in our preview here, except what it really did was it just added a space to the end. And now I can go ahead and click OK. Now what it's done is to rebuild my sentence in the form of an expression or formula. If I now grab the autofill handle and double click, oh, I'm sorry, I can't double click at that location. I've actually got to drag it down manually. And now what it's done is to rebuild the street names into a separate field using a formula. Now, a word of caution, at this point in time it is a formula. If you changed any aspect of the information that it's acting upon, just like any other aspect of Excel, it will change along with it. So if I change way to drive, it'll actually change the name of the street incorrectly. Of course, that's not what we want to do. The reason I'm pointing that out is that it's good practice that when you actually collect information like this, and it's the result of an expression, I would typically select it, copy it, and then paste the values, not the formulas, but just the values, into an adjacent field so that you can actually then use that, the difference between what's in column I, which is a formula, and column J, which is the result of the formula, allows us to then use that as hard data. Now we just have some tidying up to do. We don't need this formula anymore, so I can delete column I. We actually don't need any of the components that made up the address separately and individually, so I can delete columns E through H. And now what we have is the original address in a merged format, and then we also have a street name, and we'll name the column, or street number, I'm sorry, house number really it is. And then this is the street name. Of course I can't type. Okay, so now what we have is the two pieces of information separated. For those where they're an odd number, as in they're still a lot number, we actually have them separated out so that it's much easier to see because they're actually considered to be text, whereas these are considered to be numbers. So that's one way in which you can use the left, sometimes the right, the concatenate and the data or text to columns commands to separate information out. The only thing that would remain to be done at this point is to delete the cells or the columns that we added just for clarity purposes. And if you wanted to, if you no longer needed it, you could actually delete the original information that you acted upon. And there you have it. Hope that was useful, and enjoy using that in some of your data manipulation. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.